Hi, thank you for attending this webinar. My name is Hall Davidson. We're on the screen with Jonathan Lahr and Glenn Warren. You'll be hearing from them. We are very glad you took the time for what we think is a very important topic. We also want to thank Jonathan for agreeing to speak with us. This is a part of the archives of the California Student Media Festival, the nation's very oldest festival that supports student work and celebrates student work. Jonathan, we're glad to have you here. Jonathan Lahr is a music attorney at Icarus Law. He mostly works on the talent side, specializing in record deals, publishing deals, and licensing. He's also involved in the Web3 music space, and he teaches music business at UCLA and the USC Gould School of Law. And I think that's exactly the area that I think most people are interested in, Jonathan. So thank you very much for being here.
Yeah, yes, thank you for having me.
And I will mute myself, Jonathan, and let you just take it. Do you need to share your screen, Jonathan?
Yeah, I do need to do a screen share. Am I able to do that from here?
Yeah, I think so. Try it.
Okay, let's see, where are we at?
Well, before we get started, Jonathan, in your slide deck, do you have a little bit of your background
Yeah, I can do a quick. I'll do a quick background before we start the.
That would be great. We'd like to, we'd like to know what kind of lawyer are you, and can we trust you? That's what I want to know.
So I'll start with there are two main types of lawyers. There's transactional lawyers and litigators. Litigators are the ones who go to court. Transactional lawyers are the ones who negotiate contracts, draft contracts, and do that sort of thing. I'm that type. I don't go to court. I do paperwork, essentially.
Well, I feel safer already.
I do homework for a living, more or less.
Do you hear that? That's important.
Yeah. I get paid for it, though, so it's a little different, but essentially it's homework.
That's excellent. That's a great observation. All right, cool.
A lot of good people do that. So do you see at the bottom of the screen where you can share yours?
Yeah. So let me start the presentation here, and then I'll share my screen.
And there's little buttons here that enable audio and video. If you click those two, then we'll be able to hear.
Great. So hopefully everyone can see that. So what I'm going to talk about today that I thought everyone would find interesting is what happens when a song goes viral.
Wow.
So at the end of last year, I had an artist who had a song that just, for whatever reason, it hit the algorithms properly. It's not something you can control really. And as an artist, you kind of make the best music you can and hope that it happens. In this case, it happened. So the artist was named Mareux. The song was The Perfect Girl. I'll play a little bit of that in a second. But it's still doing around the time we were working together, it was doing 2 million streams a week across TikTok, Spotify, that sort of thing. So at that point, it was doing very well. So let me play a little bit of the songs. I think that'd be interesting for everyone to hear.
Yes.
I will pull that up. So let me play that for a second or two. So you get the idea. It's, gothy a little bit, and it's a little bit, it uses actually some lyrics from The Cure, and I'll talk about kind of what that means. It's not a cover necessarily, we'll get into that. But yeah, so he made that song, and it just went viral. So what happened at that point is he knows someone that I know. He asked if he knows the music lawyer. They reached out to me. So I got the referral in, started talking to him, and basically he said, okay, I'm getting all this interest from all these labels. And what the labels do essentially is they just have, people, departments, however many, however big it is, watching all these numbers. So they're always looking for something that's popping up on Spotify, popping up on TikTok, that they can sign and hopefully jump on, some sort of bandwagon. So the first question about this song and songs in general is, what is a copyright? So it applies to this song because there's some unique aspects to it, but we'll back up a second. So a copyright essentially is a government granted protection in a work. So you write something down, you paint something, you record something, and technically you have a copyright on it at that point. You can register it with the government, but you don't need to. As soon as it's written down, it's a copyright. In this case, so you have ownership over that work. And when you have ownership over a copyright, you have a number of things that you're allowed to do with it. We call it a bundle of different rights. So you have the right to create stuff based off of that. You have the right to license that work to other people. You have a number of things within that. And then all of these deals are essentially the person who owns the copyright giving away a part of the copyright, essentially. So in this case, so like I said, you get a copyright just by writing something down or recording it. With a song, the way a song works is there's actually two copyrights in a song. There's a copyright in the sound recording, so the actual recording that the artist makes, and there's a copyright in the music and the lyrics.
Wow, I didn't know that.
Yeah. So an example I use a lot in my classes, which is probably dated at this point, is I Will Always Love You, the Whitney Houston song, was written by Dolly Parton. So in that case, Whitney Houston owns the sound recording part of it, and Dolly Parton owns the music and lyrics part of it.
That makes sense.
So the implications of this are that there are different royalties that go to the owners of each of those copyrights. There are also different companies that are involved in licensing those copyrights. So for a sound recording, that's what record labels handle. For the composition, the music and lyrics, that's what publishing companies handle. You sign deals with each of them, and they each do different things with that, but that's the essential. So just to back up for a second, so you have a copyright as soon as you write something down. There's a technical term for it, but essentially that's what it is. You can register it if you want to. That gives you extra protections. So when you write a song, it's protected as soon as you record it. You know, assuming that it's a song that you recorded yourself, a song that you have the music and lyrics for. It didn't use anyone else's material. At that point, you can fill out a form, register it with the government, file a fee, it's like $50 or $60, and you'll be registered as the owner of that copyright with the government. Now we'll get into a little bit later, sampling and those sort of things, what that means, but this only applies if you own everything. Now, in the case of Mareux, he didn't own this entire song. So essentially what you heard is the sound recording was his, he created that. The lyrics, that was his voice, but the actual words were from a song by The Cure. So that meant that he owned the sound recording, but didn't own the music and lyrics part of it. The way that works, practically speaking, is we had to sign to a label who was willing to reach out to The Cure and get their approval for this, essentially. So, you know, we knew that that was a thing going in. We knew that, you know, that was going to hold it back a little bit in terms of the label's interest because it was, you know, work on their part, but they were still interested enough because of the numbers it was doing. So like I said, this wasn't a cover. If it was a cover, then there's a different structure in place. Whereas if you cover a song, the artist can't say no to it as long as you don't change it too much. You can cover a song, meaning you take someone else's music and lyrics, re-record them as your own thing. That's fine. They get paid through a different structure, but they can't say no to that. But in this case, because it wasn't a cover, we needed their permission.
I think we probably need a little bit more
Sure.
a definition on what a cover is.
Sure.
What
So
do you
cover-
mean when you say it was a cover?
So a cover is, think of, you know, Johnny Cash doing Hurt or something. So it's an artist playing another artist's song, essentially. So
Okay.
it's a new recording that uses the old, you know, music notes and lyrics. So basically it's not a re-recording, it's just a new version of an older song.
Okay.
That makes sense?
Yes. Thank you.
And this wasn't a cover because they just used part of it. So you had to get
Yeah.
permission. If they just covered the whole song, you wouldn't have to ask permission. But because it was just a piece of it, you have to get permission from The Cure.
Exactly. It's called an interpolation, which is beyond what we need to talk about, but yeah. So essentially, if it's anything outside of a regular cover, then it's up to the artist to approve it. You know, we reached out to the label and they reached out to Robert Smith, and he pretty much said if he likes it, he would, you know, approve it and not take a huge piece of it. They took 100% of that part because, you know, they could, which was fine. But so that was initially setting the stage essentially.
And that was the cure
Yeah.
to the problem. Okay, got it.
Yeah, exactly. Just to give up a big part of it. So when this song went viral, he started getting calls from a lot of different labels. So at the end of the day, what happened is we had calls with 7 different major labels. And these calls vary, kind of just talking to them. There's, we had a conversation with one label we didn't feel great about. And I talked to the person there. And the person there, in the course of the conversation we had, clearly had never listened to the song, like didn't know anything about it. I was talking about the song. They're like, oh, that sounds interesting. Like, so, when I said that just look at the numbers and sign you based off that, it can really be that much. They can not even listen to the song and purely just want you because of the numbers that you were doing.
Now, when you say labels, I know what you're talking about, but I think considering our potential audience, I think it's important to determine or describe, what do you mean by the labels?
Sure. So a label is a company like Warner Brothers or Universal. It's essentially a company that you sign to, you sign over the sound recordings. Usually we'll get into that, but so essentially you sign to them and they take your music and they basically push it. So they market it, they put, money behind it. They make it so people can see it. They often, give you money for touring. So essentially what a label does is it's a promotional machine that gets generated behind your music. It used to be a little bit different. There used to be more of kind of a developing artist, a younger artist would sign and they kind of develop you. For example, Bob Dylan, his first album didn't do well, but obviously, second album on, he became who he is. So they used to do a little more artist development. Now the artist development is largely, TikTok and Spotify and just, finding someone who has these good numbers, more or less. I mean, my friends at labels would deny that, but, generally speaking, that's
All right.
If you write a song and you get a call from a label, maybe 2 labels. Let's just say students write a song, it's appeared on the web, and they get a call. How soon should you think about getting a lawyer?
Immediately, pretty much, because there's a number of different reasons, and I'll reiterate this at the end. But if a label reaches out to you and they want you to pay for any of this, that's a scam. Do not do that. Do not listen to them. Certainly do not sign anything. You will never have to pay. Warner Brothers isn't going to reach out to you and say, you give us $1,000 and you will push your song. Like that just, they just won't do that. So if anyone ever reaches out to you and says that sort of thing, then, absolutely don't. I mean, it's, a good advice not to sign anything without talking to a lawyer at all. But, specifically, there are instances where you can pay to be put on Spotify playlists, and that's slightly different. But, in terms of labels, none of them are going to ask you to pay to join their label. All
right. So three really important points. One, if you do find yourself becoming viral and or getting a lot of attention, one, don't pay anything. 2, don't sign anything, and 3, call a lawyer.
Yep.
Okay, just making sure I got those 3 things.
Yeah, and if you don't know any lawyers, there's a organization called California Lawyers for the Arts, which lawyers sign up for, and you can go through them. It has a kind of a 60 to 80 to 100 an hour, kind of a low fee sort of thing. If you don't have much money, and they'll reach out to a music lawyer for you, and you can do it that way. So there are ways to reach out to lawyers if you're not someone who lives in LA and has family entertainment business and that sort of thing.
Excellent. Thanks.
Yeah. So like I said, we spoke with 7 labels with varying degrees of people we would want to work with, not want to work with, that sort of thing. We ended up getting written offers from 3 labels.
Wow, terrific.
So each of these was different, and each of them were structured differently. So now we can kind of go into what they looked like. I mean, when I talk about this with my classes, I usually kind of have them guess, so I'll have you guess, I'll put you on the spot. Like, how much do you think an advance would be? An advance meaning the money the label would give you upon signing. What would you guess these amounts would be?
I don't know, $10,000, which will pay for some amps, maybe.
What would you say, Glenn?
That's when I hear the idea of signing, I'm old, so I think of record labels. I would think like maybe $100,000.
Okay, so I'll go through the deals we got, but there were two main types of deals that we were offered. There was something called a distribution deal, something called a royalty deal. A distribution deal is essentially you don't actually sign over your copyrights to the label. You retain your ownership, you license it to them for a short period of time, and then you get them back. So in that case, it's going to be a lower advance. You're going to be paid less. They're going to give less money to marketing, less money to push you, but you retain your ownership or you get your ownership back quickly. One interesting thing that's happened is, even I took the UCLA class that I teach now, I took it 10 years ago, and ownership wasn't really a conversation. Now, the labels have been forced into kind of letting artists own more of their stuff because they have more options. They can distribute it themselves. They can distribute through their fans. They can get other investments. So, ownership is kind of the most important thing, and it's good to have a client, in my case, an artist who understands that, okay, you can get a check up front. It can be a good amount of money, but in the long term, owning your intellectual property, owning your copyrights is significantly more important. Unless they're giving you an insane amount of money, they have to realize that the value of their copyrights. So in this case, we got a distribution deal, a royalty deal, like I said, a royalty deal, a label that pays an amount of money, and the deal is signed. That's an advance. The money needs to be paid back. So the way that works is you get the advance, and then as you get money from streaming, from other royalty streams, the label collects that money at a percentage called the royalty rate, and they repay that money. And then once that money is repaid, that money goes to you. Now, that's called recouping, and that used to be, it's still pretty rare. I mean, generally, if an artist is recouped, it's usually gonna be an artist you've heard of because it's so hard to pay this back. So, that's why an advance is important. There are other streams that they can't touch, but essentially that's the way royalty deals work. So like I said, the artist gets a percentage of the sales, generally 16 to 20%, but they only start receiving that once the advance is paid back. Paying the advance back is called recouping. Does that all make sense?
Yes.
Okay. Yeah, and this involves transferring ownership of the sound recordings to the label.
So wait, one question. So once you have an advance, they give you money. You don't have to ever pay that back.
You don't pay that money back. You just don't get paid until it is paid back by
but it's
the
your
money
money.
the label is collecting. Yes, it's your money.
It sounds like a draw against commission kind of thing.
Yeah, pretty much. And so then there's a distribution deal, which is what I talked about, where it's a smaller advance. Artist gets a larger percentage of ownership, usually 70-30. Artist label is typically the common split. And it's, a different, like I said, you retain more ownership. There's also something called a profit share deal. Major labels don't really do that so much, but there's a record label that is my client. What they do essentially is they find stand-up comedians they like, put on a show. After all the costs of that show are taken out, they split everything 50-50. So that's a profit share deal. Essentially, they take all their costs out and then split it between the artist and the record label.
Got it.
Not as common in music, certainly not as common at the major label level. If you're a gigantic star, you might be able to get it at a major, but generally speaking, it's not very common. So those are pretty much the three main types of record deals you're going to see. So from there, we can get into the actual deals Mareux got. These numbers.
Well, that's what I've been wondering the whole time. What the heck happened?
So deal one, which was the distribution deal.
And this was the offer. Hey, look, I came close.
Yeah, this was a royalty deal. So an advance of 120,000, royalty of 16%, and a marketing budget of 35,000. Marketing budget is an additional advance on top of that. This deal was okay. I mean, obviously it's a significant amount of money in terms of an advance, but we didn't have a great feeling about this label. Deal two, $45,000 advance, royalty 18%. Deal three, advance 43,000, royalty 73. So you can tell from that, because it's 73 instead of 1820, that is the distribution deal, and marketing of 27,000. So these were the three deals that we got. There were some other aspects to them that we don't need to necessarily get into, but essentially these were the deals.
Okay, so Jonathan, marketing means that's the amount of money. They don't give it to you, but they're going to spend promoting you.
Yeah.
Okay,
So
they
they're gonna spend that.
guarantee they're gonna spend that amount of money promoting you or your recording.
Yeah, and what you want to do with the marketing is you want to try and cap that, or at least have a say over a certain amount. Because if you're not careful, they can spend $100,000 on that. Then
That
you're
could be a music video, and you have to pay for that out of your
then
royalties.
you're $100,000 further in the hole. Whereas usually you'd say, okay, you can spend 25, 35, but then after that you need our approval, basically.
Cool.
So one thing that I thought would be interesting, since we have a couple of minutes, is let me stop this share and I'll show you something cool that the teachers might like. Let's see
Well, that was actually pretty cool what I just saw.
Yeah.
what was that? Oh, that might have just been YouTube. But
And the notion that you really do pay for your music videos. You don't pay for them up front, but eventually
Yeah.
it comes out of your royalties.
yeah,
You
yeah,
don't get
you
it
pay
if
for
they-
everything.
Yeah.
So let's do a screen share with this. So what this is this is called the record deal simulator.
Ah,
And essentially what it does, there's a publishing deal one also.
Well, wait, record deal simulator. Is this
Yeah.
something we can get a hold of? Kind of
Yeah,
thing?
it's just this link. I'll drop it in chat.
Oh, that's terrific.
Yeah. So this would be useful for a lot of your teachers as well. And the way this works is essentially, so you say, when we talked about the 3 types of deals: royalty deal, net profit, distribution deal. So what we can do here is remember the numbers we just went through. So we talked about a royalty deal, right? The split was 16%, so 16. The advance we talked about was 120,000. Recording costs, the song is already recorded, so no recording costs here. There usually would be. Marketing costs, 35,000. And then what you can do here is you can see how many streams it takes to make money off of this deal. So in this case, this is Spotify streams, 250 million streams approximately would pay back that investment. That $155,000 would be paid back by
after
that.
which
So,
the artist starts making the royalties.
yes,
Yeah.
exactly. After that, the artist gets paid. So the gross there is almost $1 million. 16% of $1 million is approximately 155,000. So then the artist is recouped. So this is a good way of comparing deals, and even artists can use this. I can use this. I use it a lot in my classes, and then we can compare it to the distribution deal, since the other royalty deal is pretty similar. So distribution deal 70-30, artist advance was 43,000, marketing was 27,000. You can hit make money.
It's
That's
math.
18 million streams. And you're not just paying back by streams. There are other revenue streams that come into it. There's also the way TikTok works is TikTok doesn't pay on views. TikTok pays on how many people use your song in a video. So that's a little bit different also. So their rate is based on using your song in a video, and they pay based on that. So this purely is streaming through Spotify or any of those sort of streaming services, Apple Music, Amazon, whatever it is. So it's purely based on that. But so you can see the comparison. That was with the royalty deal, 250 million to pay it back. With this, 18 million to pay it back.
Wow, that's worth thinking about.
Yeah, exactly.
And Spotify and the other place, they have little artificial intelligence counters that actually do all the monitoring of how many people used it on TikTok, how many people streamed it, right?
Yeah. So TikTok keeps track of that. And then there's a website called Chartmetric, which you can use for free for like a week, and then it's ridiculously expensive after that. I don't even have it. Then you can see kind of charts and where the artists are at and that sort of thing. And the labels all have their sort of own in-house software sort of stuff.
Now, for a lot of our students, or a lot of the people that would be, in our California Student Media Festival, one of their thoughts is probably going to be, what if my music gets used in YouTube? Now, this is not something that we brought up, but we know happens. You want to quickly kind of address that part?
So like most things, there's the sort of personal level answer, and then there's the legal level answer. On a personal level,
both?
The best thing you could do is reach out to that person and try to get a credit, especially if it's a big name. You can get your name associated with them, that sort of thing, kind of get a favor out of it is the best way to go about it, essentially. Okay. If that doesn't work, you can try to use, YouTube has a takedown system and a content ID thing, and there's an appeals process you can go through, but it's kind of a crapshoot whether it'll work or not. And then you also have to ask yourself the question, I guess if your name's nowhere on it, that's one thing, but is it better to take this down or have your song used in something sort of big? Kind of decide that for yourself, whether you want to what answer makes the most sense for you. So, there's kind of a spectrum from, reaching out to the person to, using YouTube's content ID, trying to get it taken down. And, usually you definitely want to start with reaching out to them. And if they kind of ignore you, then maybe go to the content ID or something. But, usually most of these questions will have kind of the personal level answer and the legal level answer.
Thanks.
All right, here's another question. You're played by the number of streams. How long does it take for a Mareux song, for example, to count as a stream? Is it 10 seconds, 5 seconds, the whole thing?
I think as far as I know, it's as soon as it's played, it counts as a stream.
Great. Okay.
Yeah, I think as soon as it's played. I mean, the thing is, the way algorithms work is if a song is listened to for a longer period of time, then it gets pushed up in the algorithms, becomes more popular, it keeps track of how long people listen to songs, how many times people listen to songs, how many people, favorite songs, and that affects putting it on playlists and that sort of thing. So, listening to, obviously you want your fans to listen to the whole song, but in terms of how much it pays out on streams, as far as I know, it pays out, as soon as you hit play.
Thank you. Thank you. Great.
So we can get back to the PowerPoint. It's almost done.
Yeah, we can go a little longer, but
Yeah, that's
we want to
fine.
respect your time and the people that are watching it too.
Okay, great. Yeah, we'll run through the PowerPoint and then we can go to questions. So in this case, we ended up going with the distribution deal. Because we had a number of labels interested, we had leverage. What I mean by that is if you only have one label that's interested in you, you kind of have to take what they give you or walk away.
Right.
Essentially, you don't have many options. In this case, we're in a privileged position of having a lot of options, which, this is the first time I'm doing this for 15 years. This is the first time it's happened to me at the major label level. So what was nice is we were able to add some things on to distribution deal. So what we added on were two main things. So Mareux is still, he's a young guy. He's still a young artist. He's actually in, paramedic school, so he has a regular job. So he wanted a label that would invest in him long term. So instead of just giving him the single, we had them take the single and then also give him an option to do an album later on. So we added that to the contract, and we added on something that basically said, okay, so let's say he makes music for you and you don't like it. We want to be able to take that music and give it to someone else.
Got it.
Usually they wouldn't let you do that because they don't want to let you do that. And you always hear stories of artists who get stuck in these deals and the label won't release their music for one reason or another, especially because this was a young artist. I wanted to make sure that he was able to, get his music out there if the label for whatever reason didn't want to release it. So because we have leverage, we were able to add on an album option, which means that they can choose at a later date to ask us to make an album and pay us more money, and the option to, if we record any music for them and they don't like it, we can take it somewhere else and sell it to them. So we went with the distribution deal, and
Now, distribution deal was deal 1, 2, or 3?
Distribution deal was deal 3.
Mhm.
And you can tell a little bit about the advance. Deal 2 had a smaller advance also, but generally speaking, the royalty rate is a good indicator, 16, 18 versus 70.
Can you tell us which one Mareux took?
Yeah,
It'd be so tempting.
He took the distribution deal.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's just great confidence.
Yeah. I mean, it's also a matter of he liked the people at that label more. So that's a huge factor as well. You're gonna be working with these people, you want to be able to trust them and that sort of thing. So, that's the personal factor is also a factor.
And the others are one and done. And and this was not just a distribution deal. This was a relationship that was being forged. And I think that's, instead of just being transactional only, it was relational.
Yeah,
And he had a good career outside this, so he's not really so dependent. That gave him independent.
Mhm.
Smart.
Yeah. I mean, there's an artist I was talking about, it's a friend of mine named Verite, who is very, very smart. She's, always been independent, and she understood ownership, at a really young age, and she's always owned all her own music. And, so it's, it works for certain artists more than others. It works in certain genres more than others, but, ownership is certainly something to think about, when you're offered these deals.
Great, thank you.
Yeah. And the one thing we can get into is a little more copyright stuff in a second. So we talked about, someone uses a song on YouTube. What if someone steals your song? So there's something called sampling. And what sampling is it's using a piece of someone else's sound recording in your own song. So remember, by sound recording, I mean the actual recording that they made, you lift entirely, whether it's 1 second, 5 seconds, a minute, and put it whole into your song. And there's no amount of this that's allowed. You know, some people think you can have 5 seconds is fine, 10 seconds, it doesn't matter. 1 second is too much. You cannot take someone else's sound recording and use it in your song without permission. You just can't. I mean, and there's discussions around an artist, you know, I'm sure this is above your student, you know, before your student's time, but, you know, the Beastie Boys came out with some albums, you know, the rap in the 90s, and they had some amazing albums that just couldn't be released now because they're all samples. So it does affect the art in a lot of ways not to be able to do this, especially in hip hop and rap where sampling is very common. So there is a discussion regarding, you know, the tension between the legal aspect and the art aspect, but that's always going to be a tension. But legally speaking, you can't do any of it at all, ever.
Because if you sample, if your stuff is sampled, you can say no to the whole thing, right?
Yeah,
Wow.
exactly. Yeah.
Wow.
And when you sign these deals, it's always going to have a clause in there saying that you have to agree that all of this is cleared, meaning you have permission for all of it. If not, you know, you're liable for it. The label is not going to take any liability for that. So you have to make sure that everything is what's called cleared, which means that you have approval, permission to use it. What's often hard about clearing is the artist usually wants to hear the song you're making as it's going to be. So you can go through all the trouble of making this song, using their song, sending it to an artist, and they can say, oh, sorry, we don't like it. And
Wow.
you have no recourse. You can take their stuff out and, you know, redo it. But generally speaking, you know, you're kind of in trouble.
So for a student, better to use GarageBand or some other music content creation place. People that attend this webinar are going to get a free content creator tool. It's better to do that, just safer, right? Even if you love the piece you want to sample, it's just safer not to.
But I mean, even like, so Lil Nas X on that song Old Town Road, he used a beat he purchased from a beat making website, and he didn't clear it because, you know, he was a young artist and he didn't think it was going to happen. And obviously it became a gigantic song. And it turns out that that piece of music was actually from a 9 Inch Nails song. So if you look at the credits for that song, half of it is owned by Trent Reznor and 9 Inch Nails.
Wow.
They could have just had the song completely taken down if they'd wanted to, but they were kind about it and they just only took half of the song.
Wow.
They could have taken all of it. They could have had it completely removed from everything. You know, so even if you're using you know, something from a beat website or something along those lines, you need to, you know, there's different types of licenses. Often you need to make sure it's the license where you own it, which is going to be more expensive. But, you know, even using something from a beat website, it can still be problematic.
Okay, great. Thank you.
That's an important question, huh?
And then, yeah, like we said earlier, if you get nothing else from this, don't sign anything. And legit labels and producers won't ask you for money to listen to your music.
I got it. Let's go back and review. Don't pay anything. Don't sign anything, and get a lawyer.
Yes, exactly. And yeah, now we can do questions.
So I have a question, and it's maybe secondary, but if I really like music, but I don't really write music, but I'd like maybe to become a music attorney like you. What was your path to becoming a music attorney? You get to do something you love, you get to be in the music business.
So for me, it was, so I went to college, I was an English major. So I had to go to law school just because it seemed interesting. I liked reading and writing. I didn't really know, more about it than that. And in law school, I went to law school down in San Diego where they didn't have an entertainment law program. They had, some copyrights classes, and that was sort of the closest sort of thing they had. My second summer, I worked for a record label up here, realized it was something I wanted to do, moved up here after law school, did internships a bunch of different places for a couple of years and didn't find anything that felt right. I'll be honest, I didn't do well in law school, so I didn't have sort of the big law firm, big money job waiting for me. So it took a while trying to figure out what I wanted to do. I ended up taking a bunch of UCLA extension classes, and that's where I took music law and music business and artist management and film and TV law and all of those classes.
And you love
that. So that's why teaching that class means so much to me, because I took that class.
Wow.
It was not only where I learned everything, but it's where I met people. It's where I met, people actually working in the industry. So, it meant a ton to me for all those reasons. So after that, I started my own management company. So I was an artist manager and I was the lawyer for those clients. What an artist manager does is they're the person closest to the artist. So they do everything from tour planning to helping, make sure an album, if they're recording an album, make sure everything is on schedule, to, being their therapist. Often it's really a full service job. You're the closest person to the artist in the world.
Wow, there you go.
Yeah. So, I mean, and so I did that for a little while, and I liked it, but the day-to-day work kind of got a little tiresome. So in like 2016, I closed that down, started my own law firm, and been building that up since then. So, I mean, in terms of why I wanted to do it, I mean, it's, you know, the thing is, it's not an easy field, and I've been doing it for a long time. One thing I will say up front that, you know, I try to be honest about, if I didn't have parents who could support me while I wasn't making any money, I wouldn't have been able to do it. And it sucks that you know, the industry really requires that sort of thing. It self-selects for certain types of socioeconomic people, and I'm sure there's tons of people who'd be great in this industry who could never get into it because they weren't privileged enough to have that.
Right.
You know, it's something that I really hate about the business, and it's a reason I would never have an unpaid internship or anything like that. I think any unpaid internships are really, really awful. You know, so that is something that's an unfortunate aspect of it. But I mean, in terms of just working at it for a long time, I mean, you really have to feel like there's nothing else you want to do. And that's really what it comes down to. And I spent plenty of time with my therapist trying to figure out anything else I would want to do that might make more sense and be easier. But, you know, at the end of the day, and I got lucky, you get into it because you like, you know, famous people, you like music, but 95% of the time you're not doing that. You're doing the work. And I happen to like what the work is. I find it interesting. I find it unique and challenging in a lot of good ways. So, you know, I got a bit lucky in that I like the actual day-to-day stuff of it. But yeah,
we're glad you're there.
What'd you say?
We're glad you're there.
Thank you. Yeah, and it's just, you know, it takes a long time and it's difficult, and you know, but it's absolutely rewarding in a lot of ways.
Wow. Well, I definitely have a question for you. You know, you raised a topic around sampling and how sampling, you can't even use a second, you know, so that's good information for us to have. But then you talked about students or people that were creating something and they were using what they thought was widely allowed parts of music that they could use. So that brings me to a more specific question, like inside of a GarageBand, which a lot of our students would use. There is music in there, like drum beats and, you know, some melodic lines they could use, things you could loop. And they put that together and they think they've created something of their own. My question to you from a legal standpoint is that is that now owned by them or not?
So you're going to get the answer lawyers always love, which is
it depends.
Yes, it depends.
Oh, I mean, thanks a lot.
Yeah, I mean, I would imagine that the
everything was going great until now.
I imagine the GarageBand stuff is probably cleared for those sorts of uses. So it's probably okay, but you know, it depends on, you know, what the license is with, you know, the software and those sort of things. I would imagine it's probably okay, but you know, a lawyer is never going to say, you know, absolutely go ahead and do it, because you know.
So they'll add like they write their own lyrics to something, and then they put up there. And a lot of this stuff isn't melodic line stuff, so it's just more like, you know, it's more like the rhythm section of something. And so they layer on top of it a melodic line, a musical line, and lyrics to go with it, and they sing on top of that as basically their accompanying band. Are they in pretty good shape if it's like coming out of GarageBand?
They're in pretty good shape with that. I mean, you get into trouble more like when you use like beat licensing websites and those sort of things. Like, you know, GarageBand is a huge piece of software. I'm sure, you know, everything is, you know, taken care of in that case.
Well, it's Apple, I would imagine, has been pretty much gone through the filter of Apple, which is pretty tight, I think.
Where it's like a beat licensing website, you know, you never know where it's going to come from and who made it. And, you know, even if you buy it off of that site, they might still sell it, so someone else might use it. And then it becomes an issue of, you know, that sort of thing. So if it's a GarageBand, then I'm sure you're probably fine. If it's a beat licensing website, then it might be a little more special, but especially if it's a GarageBand thing, we're using just, you know, a drum machine or something along those lines, then it's probably okay.
That's cool. Well, I got more questions for you. I told Hall I would have plenty. One of them is a lot of our folks in the California Student Media Festival. These are students that are under 18 years of age. So we've got students that, let's say we got a student, say in second grade, who got ambitious and did just what I talked about moments ago and laid that down and Maybe got the whole family in there and got the cat to sing a little line in there too. That just crazy. And now instantly they see this is getting attention. What about a person who doesn't can't enter into a contract?
So in that case, the parents would be responsible for it. So I've signed underage clients to major label deals, and the parents have to essentially sign as their guardians. So the parents would be the ones who would be responsible for that.
Is there any extra protections for people that are underage when it comes into this? Do labels have concerns when dealing with people who can't speak for themselves, so to speak?
And let's define underage. Is it 18, Jonathan?
Yeah, 18. Yeah, so I mean, I'm sure there are, those sort of concerns. There's obviously also concerns with, a ton of stories about, terrible stage parents taking all of their money. There are laws in place. I think the Coogan laws, I think they're called after that child
Right.
actor whose parents took all his money in like the 50s. But yeah, so there are laws in place about that sort of thing. Also making sure that, parents put the money aside for their kids and all that if they're, trying to take it themselves. But yeah, I mean, there's definitely certain concerns if they're underage, and it can be a slightly different thing. And then of course, you hope that the parents, have the kids' best interest at heart, and that the parents will protect them and all that sort of stuff as well.
So if Jonathan, the family that Glenn is talking about, here's their stuff being used on TikTok, the first thing they should do is find an attorney?
Yeah, I would find an attorney, and an attorney would basically register that with different companies that pay out certain types of royalties. And so you start getting paid, probably not much unless it gets really gigantic. But yeah, just sign you up with certain companies that deal with certain types of royalties and that sort of thing. Yeah.
That's good.
Or if a label reaches out to them, again,
Mhm.
going back to the three things, right? One, don't sign anything. Two, don't pay anything. And three, get an attorney.
Yes, exactly.
And you did give us the website, which we'll use, but you're also with Icarus Law. So that's, we might as well put a plug in for you right there too.
Sure.
Well, that would be the go-to organization, I would say. The other thing you brought up earlier was that little app you were using to show. Are we going to get a link to that?
Yep. There you go. It's in the chat now.
That was pretty cool. Who created that?
It's a company. What is it? I think Create OS is the name of the company, and they have a publishing simulator also, and they have this simulator. And I think they basically make resources like this that people can use.
I can see right now that these are free resources.
Yeah, they're free.
Well, I can tell you right now, that this would be something very powerful for teachers, because this would spark greater interest in students and get these questions going. So
yeah,
that's really helpful.
And
what's the other one you said?
There's also a publishing deal simulator. We didn't talk about publishing deals, but there's a similar thing for that side of it.
That's beautiful.
And then we are coming up on 45 minutes. So Glenn, do you have anything else?
I could go on all day with this guy. I can tell you right now, but I got to tell you, thank you so much. We already pushed the envelope past it. There's not 1 second of this that was not absolutely engaging. I think is incredibly valuable. It is information that our students, our teachers, society in general probably doesn't have a handle on. And you're not bad for a lawyer. That's not bad. You're really not bad. That's great.
Not bad for a lawyer. Yeah, I'll take that.
That's good. Yeah. Who knew?
Right.
Yeah. And I'll drop, I just put my email address in the chat. If anyone wants to reach out to me, has any questions.
Well, thank you so much. And I'm wondering who's the artist? What was I want to make sure I don't pronounce it incorrectly. You referenced as an example.
Mareux.
Mareux.
Yeah.
If Mareux, I don't know if you're in touch with Mareux, but if Mareux would ever like to connect with the Student Media Festival, we'll be happy to have him share how awesome he thinks you are. Okay.
Sure, sounds good. We can do a whole panel on that.
All right. Well, we will post this as an archive. If you're watching this as an archive, watch nearby for those posted links. Also for a link to some free content creation software. And we'll, with that, I think we'll bring it to an end. And once again, thank you very much, John.
Behind me is the Troubadour. So once you're of age, you should definitely check out a concert there. It's in West Hollywood. It's a great venue. It's my favorite in the city.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much. This has been extremely valuable.
Yeah, of course.
This was amazing. Thank you so much.
Sounds good.
Again, Jonathan Lahr from Icarus Law.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Are we clear?